Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of the infamous Universe Q&A. I'm just going to jump right in to the questions on this one without wasting any time. So our first question comes from this guy, our timer 559679. Sorry if I butchered your name, I have no idea how to pronounce that. And he asks, what potential do you think Delsin has to continue the plot? For example, he can find out the DUP is still running, Augustine has revived Reggie and given him powers. Okay. So, first of all, I want to say something, and I don't want to be an asshole. Don't take this the wrong way. I'm not making fun of you or calling you out, but I just want to point this out. Reggie does not have powers. Okay? He does not have powers. He will never have powers ever. If you actually know the infamous universe very well, you know that, and this is just basic stuff. This isn't like backstory or lore or kind of mysterious stuff that goes on in the story. This is right out there in your face. People with powers are called conduits. They have a genetic gift that allows them to control and manipulate substances. It's called the conduit gene. It's genetic. Okay? People who don't have the conduit gene will never have powers. Ever. Which means all of the DUP soldiers are conduits. Now, there are two kinds of conduits. There are conduit positives and just plain old conduits. Conduit positives are people who don't have powers yet, but do have the conduit gene. Conduits are, of course, people with powers. So they're the same thing, not the same people. They're the same thing, just conduit positives don't have their powers yet. So all of the DUP soldiers are conduit positives that were injected with a serum that gave them Augustine's concrete ability. That's why they all have the same powers. Kind of like the Icemen in Infamous 2, how Bertrand kind of had them made to have ice powers. It's kind of a similar situation here. So, if it's genetic, how do we know for sure that Reggie doesn't have powers? Well, if you remember, at the beginning of Second Son, as you're walking into Seattle, you come across a group of fingerprint scanners. I guess they're just finger scanners. They don't really scan your fingerprint, necessarily. I don't know how they work. I've heard that they take a drop of your blood and analyze the blood, and they can tell if you have the conduit gene through a blood sample. But you walk up to the finger scanners, and Reggie goes up first, and he puts his finger on the scanner, and he walks through the gate. No alarms go off. No guards approach him and tell him that he has to, go in a cage or whatever. Nothing happens. It beeps him through. He walks through the gate just fine. Those scanners detect the conduit gene in regular conduits and conduit positives, which means Reggie does not have powers at all. Otherwise, the fingerprint scanner station would have detected that in his blood. So now to directly answer your question, what potential does Delsin have to continue the plot? I don't think he has that much potential, honestly. Sucker Punch kind of wasted his character in Second Son. I mean, they gave us a character who could absorb any power he wanted, any power at all, and they just wasted it on 3.5 abilities, which kind of sucks because Sucker Punch went big. They're like, hey, let's go big or go home. Let's give the players a character who can get any power he wants. So now that they've wasted that character in Second Son, it's like, what do we do next? What can we do to top a character who can get any power he wants? It's like you can only go backwards from here. It's like, oh, so we're going to give you a character who can have any power he wants, and then in the next game, we're only going to give you a character with one power. It's like either way Sucker Punch wants to go, they have to take a step backwards unless they do my idea and have multiple playable characters, which I think is the only way they can go to make the next game better than Second Son. Honestly, I don't think Delsin has that much potential to continue the story. The DUP probably is not still running unless Sucker Punch wants to do a Star Wars Episode 7, because as you all know, it's like, oh, the Empire wasn't really destroyed. I mean, the Emperor was killed and Darth Vader died, but the Empire is still secretly living in the shadows, and then they come out of the closet in Episode 7. Yeah, I've seen that excuse before, Hollywood. Nice try. I'm not buying it. Anyway, unless Sucker Punch wants to do that with the next game, they're like, oh, the DUP wasn't really destroyed. Augustine was fucking killed or put in jail, whatever way you want to go off the good or evil ending. But there was a guy in the middle of a fucking house and so, and he, was part of the DUP, and Delsin took out Augustine, and he got mad and held a grudge against Delsin, and he became the leader of the DUP. Like, I don't really know what to even say about that. I just think it's a bad idea. So our next question comes from Kai or Key. I don't know how to pronounce that either. 70,000. And they ask, what do you think of Second Son's lack of references to the previous games? Do you think there will be more in the future? Do you want more? Yeah, about the lack of references to the previous games, I'm very angry about that. As you all know, Infamous 1 and Infamous 2, even though I've made fun of it quite a lot, have a place very, very near and dear to my heart. I love the first Infamous. Absolutely fucking love it. Okay, the second game, not so much. Infamous 2 is still good. Infamous 2 is great after playing Second Son. Infamous 2 is fantastic. But Infamous 1 is like the platinum medal. Just nothing could ever become my favorite game over Infamous. I've played better games. The best game I've ever played is The Last of Us, but my favorite game is Infamous 1. There's a difference between best and favorite in my book. But as for the references, yes, I'm very pissed off. I'm very angry that there are no references to the previous games. Sucker Punch just absolutely pissed on the first two games because, you know what? They made Second Son for the Xbox fanboys that came over to Sony after the 2013 Xbox One DRM fiasco. Remember that? Xbox One was going to have DRM up the ass, and all the Xbox guys were like, yeah, I'm going to go to Sony where I can play used games. And Sucker Punch decided to capitalize on this, and they were like, well, we wouldn't want the poor Xbox fanboys to have to buy a PS3 and play the first two games, and we're too lazy to remaster the first two games so they can play it on the PS4, so let's just, reboot Infamous without really rebooting it so the Xbox guys can have a good experience. Oh, piss off! Piss off! Really? You're just gonna throw the old games under the bus and throw your longtime fans out the fucking window so you can make sure the Xbox fanboys have a good experience with your franchise? God. You can tell that this greatly disturbs me on a very deep emotional level. I don't know what to say about this. I really don't know what to say. It's almost like in Second Son, the events of the last two games never happened. It's almost like Second Son is its own game. It's like, yeah, we're going to restart the Infamous franchise because nobody ever mentions Cole or the Beast or Empire City or New Marais or the Ray Sphere or Bertrand or DARPA. None of that stuff is ever referenced. Not once. Nobody talks about the plague. I mean, for crying out loud, Cole McGrath stopped the Beast and cured the plague. He saved the fucking world and nobody even utters his name anymore. Oh, but Ian, what about the Cole's Legacy DLC? That was a fucking joke. The Cole's Legacy DLC is a fucking joke. It's 4 missions, 4 disgustingly short missions, where you get a phone call from Raymond Wolf, who is Dr. Wolf's brother. It's like, hey, you remember that guy in Infamous 2 that helped you build the RFI? Yeah, I'm his brother, and I'm a famous news reporter. Even though you've never heard my name before in any of the Infamous games, you've never seen me on TV, you've never read about me in a newspaper, nobody ever mentions me, but I'm a famous news reporter. Yeah, Raymond, you're only there because the player needs to feel some kind of connection to the first two games. What I'm saying is that Sucker Punch pulled Raymond Wolf out of their fucking ass to attempt to make us feel a connection to Infamous 2. It doesn't work. He doesn't even have his own character model. He's an NPC. You can walk around Seattle and see Raymond Wolf's NPC character 17 fucking times in one sitting. You put no effort into that DLC, Sucker Punch, no effort at all. And then you give us Cole's jacket as a reward. We don't even get to meet Zeke. I thought Zeke was going to give us Cole's actual jacket. But you beat the DLC and it just says, new jacket unlocked. Really? And it doesn't even look like Cole's jacket. It goes over Delsin's hoodie. Okay. When I put on Cole's jacket, it should take Delsin's hoodie off and have just the jacket, as it looked on Cole himself. You know, in Infamous 1, his jacket was cool. In Second Son, it looks like a fucking raincoat. I need to take a deep breath and calm down before I continue. Okay. Do I want to see more references to the previous games in future Infamous games? Yes, I do. I want to feel like the games are interconnected and they're in the same universe. Second Son did not feel like it was in the same universe as the first two games. It felt like a spin-off. Second Son felt like a spin-off of the Infamous franchise. So yes, I want people to mention Cole. I want people to mention DARPA and the Ray Sphere and the Empire event. I want that stuff to be American history. Okay, I want it to be in the same universe as the other Infamous games. I want it to feel like we're in the same franchise. That's all I've ever wanted out of Second Son. And of course, we never got it. Really disappointed about that. You know, I'm just really passionate about the Infamous franchise. I'm very passionate about it. It's the one thing that I could talk about and fangirl over for forever. And yes, I get angry, I rage, and I get upset. That's mostly just because of my expectations for the series. You know, the first game just absolutely blew me away. And then the second game was announced and I was excited for it and it didn't meet my expectations. And Second Son, well, I had really high expectations for Second Son. I thought it was going to be the game that redeemed the franchise from the failure that was Infamous 2. And then the closer we got to launch, the more and more I realized that my expectations were not going to be met. Okay, this next comment comes from my good friend Zach, and he has a lot of questions that need to be answered. This is probably going to be the last comment I feature in this video, so if you haven't seen your comment yet, don't worry. I'm going to put it in here. I just have to get everybody's comments from episode 1 into episode 3 and 4. And then if I get comments on this video, they will probably be on episode 5 and 6, so on and so forth. So the comments posted on the current video won't show up until 2 or 3 episodes later. That's just how I have to do everything. I'm sorry if it's time-consuming and frustrating, but that's the only way I know how to do it. Okay, number 1. How do you feel about each game having less and less comic-style cutscenes? Personally, I love the cutscenes, and this angers me. It angers me too. I really like the comic cutscenes in the first game. You know, they looked really cool. It looked like an actual comic book. There was ink splatters all over the place on the corners of the pages. On some of the cutscenes, it looked like you were actually watching a real comic book. The cutscenes looked like they were hand-drawn, and they still kind of are, but they just looked different than the other Infamous games have, and I liked Infamous 1's cutscenes a lot. Infamous 2's comic cutscenes I didn't like. They were too clean and too sharp. All the edges were perfect. There was no little scribbles. There was no ink splatters. I didn't like it. Infamous Second Son brought it back. There was a lot more ink splatters, and it looked like paint was dripping down from the top of the page, and then it would transition. There was that one part during the Fetch flashback where she's talking about how she killed Brent, and it looks like her face just melts, and then it shows Kurt and Kay and the DUP APC. I thought that was cool. I liked how they did it in Second Son, but I don't like how there's less of them. I want more comic cutscenes. And the reason there's less of them is because you're on new hardware, and now Sucker Punch can render cutscenes in-game. They don't have to pre-render them. They can just do it right there in-engine, completely free. So there's probably going to be less comic-style cutscenes, unfortunately, but I would like to see more of them because I do love the comic-style cutscenes. Number 2, do you think the infamous cities are a little too small? I think it depends on how fast you can get around. The first game was perfect, the second felt a little small, and Second Son left a lot desired. Could have been at least 1.5 times as big. I agree. Infamous 1 had a perfect city. Empire City was laid out just right. The way the buildings were placed, the way the streets were laid out, the blueprint of the city, so to speak, was very good. It made getting around the city feel natural. You know, it felt like that's how a city would be built, and it provided a lot of exploration for the character. You didn't feel like you were constantly seeing the same buildings over and over and over again. Infamous 2 came around, and the city felt a little bit awkward. It felt like no matter where you went, you were constantly seeing the same thing over. And, you know, that's kind of a biased argument because in Infamous 1, granted, you do see the same buildings over and over again because you're in the same city. I don't know how to explain it. It felt different in Infamous 1. You know, when you're talking about the feel of something, you can't convey that very well through the internet or through words. Infamous 1, Empire City just felt different. Numeray, it felt like you were constantly getting stuck in the same place over and over again. Oh, there's the clock tower again. There's the cemetery again. There's the fucking fort again. There's the ice tower again. It just got boring after a while. And Second Son is even worse. You know, I like Seattle. I like the idea of Seattle, but in the game, after you've already been around the city a couple times, it's just not fun anymore. The islands are super narrow, so you're constantly seeing this same thing over and over again. It's like, oh, there's the Space Needle that we can't climb again. There's the park again. There's Augustine's Tower again. There's the concrete structure again. There's that one building with the glass awning again. There's the other building with the latte owl again. And it didn't help that half of the buildings were copy and pasted. Seriously, get on Second Son right now and go around Seattle and write down how many times you see the same building model copy and pasted to a different part of the city. It's incredible. It just shows how lazy Sucker Punch was with that game. Because the buildings, half of them are copy and pasted. Granted, some of them are taller than the other ones, but they're still the same building design. You could have done better. Sucker Punch, really, you could have. I don't like how small the city is. I feel like the cities could be bigger. They should be bigger. Like I also said in episode 1, if you can make a city the size of GTA 5 or Just Cause 2, I would be more than happy to spend hours on end just running around, wasting time, shooting up bad guys, blowing up shit. I would love to do that in a really, really big environment. Number 3, do you think Delsin will team up with Zeke in Second Son 2? Excuse me, Zach? Second Son 2? No. No. There will be no such thing as Second Son 2.
No.
Next question. Number 4, will we see anything more of Kessler? I don't think we will, sadly. I don't think so either, Zach. Unfortunately, I think Sucker Punch has moved on from that point. Kessler was one of the best villains I've ever seen. Like, out of all the villains I know, Marvel and DC, on my list, Kessler is in the top 5. He is just insanely epic as the main antagonist because of his motives, because of who he is under the hood, and everything that caused him to do what he did. Just everything about him is just perfect supervillain material. I know that I couldn't have come up with a better antagonist, and I love Kessler as a character. But unfortunately, I don't think we will see any more of Kessler unless Sucker Punch decides to do something with the whole time travel scheme, because longtime fans of the series know that the game was originally based on time travel because Kessler had went back in time to train Cole to become the warrior that he needed to be in order to fight the Beast, which was a future destructive force that Kessler had failed to defeat on multiple attempts. So inFAMOUS is based off of time loops and time travel and science. Yay. So if Sucker Punch wants to get really confusing and mindfuck all of us, they could do something like that, but I really don't think they're going to. Finally, number 5. What do you think about the problem inherent to a game with more than one ending, figuring out where to go next? Well, the obvious problem is the fan base. You know, some fans might want a certain ending to be canon, and other fans might want the other ending to be canon. In the case of inFAMOUS 2, Sucker Punch took the trophy data and decided to go with a good ending. Sucker Punch looked at who got what trophy first. 70% of players got the good ending trophy first. The other 30% got the evil ending trophy first. And Sucker Punch actually wanted to do the evil ending as canon, but decided to use the players' trophy data and their choice to go with the good ending as kind of like a catalyst for the next game. Sucker Punch was like, hey, inFAMOUS is a game about choices. So what if the player's real-life choice to do the good ending first resulted in where the next game went? And it's a clever idea, it really is, but we got Second Son, and now a lot of people aren't really that happy with it. So I guess that was a bad consequence for choosing the good ending first. Another problem with a game that has two different endings is that one ending has to be canon, the other ending has to be fake. Think about it. In inFAMOUS 1, whether you were a good guy or a bad guy, the game ended relatively the same way. So you could go into inFAMOUS 2 with good karma or bad karma, and it actually let you do that on the main menu before you started the game. And the story would still play out the same. At the end of inFAMOUS 2, you have two very separate endings. Now let's just pretend that inFAMOUS 3 is the next game in the series. You would go into that game with two very different endings. You would have one ending where the Beast was dead, Cole was dead, Quo is dead, you know, the plague is cured, it seems like Conduits are gone, and then you have another half of the game where Cole is alive, Cole is the Beast, Conduits are alive, humans are dying, and you have this really evil world. So you have two very separate games on the same disc. Now the issue with that is that you couldn't make karma choices, because if you were playing as a good guy and then you made an evil choice, it would have to either overlap with the evil story, which would not work at all because they're almost in two separate worlds, or you would have to have basically 4 different stories in one game. Because just think, if you're playing on the good story and you make an evil choice, then the evil side of the good story would have to be different than the evil story, and if you made a good choice on the evil story, the good side of the evil story would have to be different than the good side of the good story. So it's just really too confusing and too time-consuming to try to work out. So there's no possible way that a game could exist with two different endings both being canon. Okay, finally done. That's all I have time for today, guys. Thanks for watching. Remember to like, comment, and share this video with all your friends. And remember to check out my Patreon, Facebook page, and my Twitch account. I'm going to be live streaming Black Ops 3 when I get it. We got to get some more pledges going on my Patreon, so just be sure to give those a check. Thanks for watching, guys. Remember, leave me more questions, and I'll catch you in the next video.
Gene, you got any more demons you can send my way?
Yeah, but it might take a while.
Haven't got a while. Gonna use up all the ones I got in about 2 minutes.
No, this isn't supposed to happen!
Don't flake on me now, man.
I can't do this anymore!
Eugene, stay with me!